when we look at that space in between, that's how we can really see what the story's trying to tell us, what the numbers are trying to communicate to us, of how we can then run the business better. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I hope everyone is having a great week, and we are getting ready for this wonderful holiday weekend. So yesterday I was mentoring someone and we were talking about financial analysis. Woohoo! We were looking at podcast. Listen to me. We were looking at profit and loss statements, balance sheets, and really how to take a look at them and understand what's happening in the business. And we were looking at it from, again, the financial side of it, the finance end. You know, what does the revenue mean? What does the increase in revenue and the increase in cost mean? And at the same time, also then taking that and how do we relate that back into the operations of the business? And we were going through this. She is someone who is actually, she's an intern. And I am hoping that she ends up, when she graduates from college, I am hoping that she ends up taking a full-time role with these businesses where she would end up becoming the bookkeeper in the business. She would end up becoming, she would go into accounting. And I was mentoring her, and it was funny because sometimes you don't realize, and I don't know, I do this to myself. Maybe I have humility. I don't know what it is, but sometimes you don't realize. And I said to her, I said, I should have recorded this. You don't realize how much wisdom you have or how much knowledge you have about something. Or like I was coming up with like a new framework that I'm going to talk to you about today. Until you're like in the moment and you're going through things. So we were dissecting financials and doing some financial analysis, not just for one business, but for 3 different businesses. So 3 businesses, 3 different industries: restaurants, retail, travel. And because these are the businesses that I run along with my own consulting business. And we're looking at all these things, and we're looking at the nuances, because the metrics that you're looking at in the restaurant business are a bit different than what you're looking at in retail, and are a bit different than what you're looking at in tourism, in travel. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are the same: gross profit, net income, what does the EBITDA look like? What is, what's going on with liabilities? How much is the credit card balance? What's the cash flow? Those are all the same. But then there's nuances. There's nuances with the restaurant industry where you have prime cost and you have labor cost, and you have table turns. You have, in the retail industry, you have inventory turns. You have gross margin return on investment, GMROI. So there's some nuancy stuff, and she's learning this. And it was funny because I said to her, is this kind of the same things that you're learning in school? And she said, oh God, no. She goes, I'm learning way more here. So I said to her, and this is what I want to talk about, is I said to her, I said, listen, as we're looking at these numbers, we're not looking at it through one lens. We're looking at it through multiple lenses. And I said, again, the finances, the numbers are going to tell us a story. They're going to tell us a story about what's happening in the business. And then from there, when we look at the story, then we can actually make some tweaks to what's happening operationally. So as we were digging into some of these numbers, an example was, okay, we see an increase in food, or a slight increase in food sales, but we saw a large increase in food cost. So what does that mean? So and I said to her, I said, let's think about the story about what's happening. So we've had some impacts because of weather in the town. We've had some impacts because of some other things that are going on. But then we've also had increases in food costs, significant increases, because fuel has gone up and a variety of other things. So we dug into it and said dairy went up, produce went up, meat went down. But anyway, bottom line to all of this is all of these nitty gritty details end up telling a story. And what the story then, when we look at it and we read between the lines and we look at the space between the notes, is what someone told me long ago when I was studying piano. When we look at that space in between, that's how we can really see what the story's trying to tell us, what the numbers are trying to communicate to us, of how we can then run the business better. And the more she started to look at this, the more it started to integrate a lot of the other things that we had been talking about and I had been mentoring her on, as far as how the business is run and why it's important from my standpoint is, as someone who's running all these businesses, is to look at it. I look at it from the 360-degree view. But for someone who's in accounting, looking at what story are those numbers trying to tell us? Because whatever that story is, it's going to help us to do things better. And the importance of understanding how the business runs so that we can run it better. So all of this came to 3 things that I wanted to talk to you about. And I ended up talking to her about these same 3 things. Just as the numbers are telling you a story in your business, your whole business is telling you a story. Your whole business is telling you a story. This is why, and I just did a podcast episode on this, where I talked about your business isn't just this one-dimensional or even two-dimensional thing. It is completely, there are so many dimensions to it. And when we're willing to hear and see and listen to what's happening and really see the space between the notes that is happening with the story that everything's trying to tell you from operations. When we look at our numbers and we pay attention to the story, what's happening, it can pull out and show us where we have broken processes, or where we have wrong people in the wrong positions, or where we're ordering too much and it's causing waste. But we have to be willing to hear the story. We have to be willing to see the story. We have to be willing to listen to the story. So from there, when we do that, when we're willing to think outside of the box, which is why I believe with the rise of everyone using AI, if we can learn how to use AI correctly, we can really come up with some creative solutions to things. We can look at what the story is that the numbers are trying to tell us and what our business is trying to tell us, and use AI to help us interpret this information so that we can come up with some even more creative solutions to what we're trying to do, right? This is how we can open up another part of our brain, another part of our thinking that we've had closed for so long because we were just in a robotic world of just processing tasks and checking boxes and just constantly just chasing after something that we wrote on a piece of paper. This is right now is how, when we listen to that story and we see that story and we dig into these things, that's how we can really start to come up with creative solutions. That's how we can get even more creative with our customer experience and how we can continue to move our business forward. Number 2 is we need to find our rhythm. And when we can get into a rhythm in how we work with people, when we meet with people, how we communicate with people, again, when we do our analysis, when we can find our rhythm with ourselves as leaders, but also with our team, even more important with our team. That's how we start to build that bridge between the people who are running the business and the people who are making the results happen and creating the success for the business. We can build that bridge when we find that rhythm. But even rhythm in the numbers. Rhythm is found in cash flow. What is that rhythm for what your cash flow looks like on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? whatever it is. What is that rhythm that the story is trying to tell you? And when we find that rhythm, when we get into a rhythm with our team, with meetings, when we get into a rhythm with how we look at stuff, that's how we can then get into flow. And when we can find our rhythm and get into that rhythm and get into the rhythm of the story that our business is trying to tell us with numbers, with processes, with foot traffic, with marketing, with our team and how we're working on projects and how we're achieving projects and how we're not achieving projects. And in a rhythm of, you know what, this isn't working. Let's try something different. When we do that, we get into flow. And when we're in a state of flow, we're in a state of alignment. We're in a state of elevated thinking. We're in a state of elevated creativity. And that's how we can achieve more with the people that are dedicated to what they're doing. The third thing is consistency. Consistency leads to being congruent, leads to alignment. So consistency, doing things consistent all the time, whether it's how you plate food in the restaurant or how you are conducting meetings, how you are doing in the restaurant. I talk about restaurant industry a lot, how you're doing lineup notes. When you're consistent with that, that's how people get in congruency with each other. That's how they get into alignment with each other. Okay. And again, you can see how flow comes in here. And when you do that, that's how you're going to create success, not just for the business, but for the people that are making the business work. So always, your business is always telling you a story. You just need to be willing to open your eyes, your ears, and your heart to hear what it's trying to tell you. Don't shut it out. Listen to it. Open it up. Expand that thinking. Expand that creativity. Number 2, learn how to find your rhythm so you can get into flow with your team. Learn how to find that rhythm that your business has, that flow that your business is asking for between numbers and processes and marketing and customer experience, whatever it is. Find your rhythm and you'll find your flow. Stay consistent to build congruency and alignment so that you can then see the success that you're looking for on your terms, not on anybody else's terms. Because when you do all of these things, you're carving your own path. You're not following some cookie cutter method that somebody told you to do. You're doing it. You're defining it on your own terms. You're building it on your own terms, and you're creating that success on your own terms. So your business is always telling you a story. The numbers are, everything is, your team is, and your heart is always telling you a story. All right. Have a great rest of your week. I look forward to seeing you back here soon. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a great rest of your day.